lesson from those employment cases is that contracts are dead. The fictitious types of contracts that the gig economy companies like to invent to create a new legal reality of micro entrepreneurs and self-employed contractors working in the gig economy. This is a type of fiction that's legally is dying, at least, but it is being propped up and replaced, I believe, by intensification of algorithmic control, and backing that up is an intensification of surveillance of workers. The other thing that's really important as we get this panel underway, I believe, is to understand that the gig economy is more than just food delivery and passenger transport services. So delighted to have Kate, for example, from the European Sex Workers Alliance, to bring that to life, to bring that reality to life, and to show that our understanding is that work is work in all of its forms, although the legal constructs around work may change. But work spans a broad area, and it includes greater and lesser definitions of autonomy versus control, but increasingly that autonomy and control is digitally mediated. The second thing we want to understand in this panel also is that there are great universal opportunities in resisting this type of platform control of workers because of the global nature of these and universal nature of these platforms. But also we have to understand that the way these platforms manage workers and interact with our worker rights is very different in the North and South context. So delighted to have Ayode to join us from Nigeria to help us understand that a little bit more. Before getting underway, I want to do a little bit of advertisement. Worker Info Exchange just published a report last month. It's called Managed by Bots, Data-Driven Exploitation in the Gig Economy. Please have a look at it. You can find a link to it at our website, workerinfoexchange.org, and also on our Twitter account, which is @workerinfox. So with that, I'm going to get the panel underway. We've got Kate McGrew from the European Sex Workers Alliance. We've got Ayode Ibrahim from the National Union of App-Based Transport Workers in Nigeria, live from Lagos, I believe. And we've got Ida Ponce del Castillo from the European Trade Union Institute, who's an expert in this area of new tech and new work. So with that, let's get underway. And could I start with you, Kate?
Sure. Thank you so much for the introduction, James. I'm Kate McGrew. I'm a sex worker activist and a performing artist, and I'm co-convener of the European Sex Worker Rights Alliance, and we represent 100 organizations organizations in countries from Europe and Central Asia. So I'm very happy to be talking with you guys today because indeed we're often not included in the spaces where we very much should be, because we're a marginalized population like so many other, but invisibilized greatly. So, sex work is undoubtedly an economic activity that is informal and unprotected for the most part. And so the issues of stigmatization and criminalization that we face really increase dangers that we suffer through. So during the pandemic, this has changed for us. Sex workers are so used to being adaptable. We're used to navigating these quasi-legal landscapes. And we're used to having to work around changing laws and different sort of parameters around the ways that we're able to work. So, of course, in the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people turned to online work. It seemed like a very natural and simple sort of transition for a lot of workers. And when you really look at it from the outset, it seems like it might be a more preferable way of working. It's less danger for workers when we're not in the physical space of somebody. We're less likely to be physically harmed or exploited in those spaces. However, online work isn't really a solution that was perfect for people. Some people even prefer on or in-person work to online work. To send your image out into the world is something that not everybody is comfortable with. And what happens is, for example, in Ireland, where I live and work, we have this lopsided law where as long as a worker works by herself, it's legal to sell sex, but our clients are criminalized, and also working in pairs or groups is criminalized under a so-called brothel keeping law. And we've seen people arrested for this way of working, which of course is endangering for us because we'd like to work together. But to have this kind of lopsided law has meant that really it tips the power dynamic towards the clients. It's also illegal to advertise here. And so it bulks up the monopoly of these corporations and organizations that therefore can really design their platforms however they want without any transparency, without us understanding the way they're doing the algorithm. And when more and more people join these platforms, the prices indeed have been driven down. We're pitted against each other in competition and forced to start producing more and more content, and often more and more explicit content. And of course, these platforms are designed with clients in mind. And so, we're faced with things like during the pandemic, them deciding to increase prices for advertising for us. And we have no power in this realm. So, sex workers, it will be interesting to hear the other panelists talk because there are many similarities that we share. We fight for decriminalization as opposed to legalization, because decriminalization is a more flexible model of legal working. That doesn't mean that there would be no regulations whatsoever. But for example, if we were able to legally advertise, we could design our own platforms. And so this is just one small thing in terms of online work of why we fight for what we do. Of course, we realize that there can be laws that are passed. There was a law that was passed here after a leak of nudes on a Discord site called Coco's Law, and we can pass these laws and try and criminalize image-based sexual abuse and everything. But the reality is, sex workers, we do need to know that once our image is out in the world, it's no longer under our control. And, again, we really just don't know what is being done with our data. And so when the Digital Services Act there was passed, it was very good news for us that there seems to be some sort of mechanism for users to report content that is ours that has been stolen, but there are still issues around them wanting to increase what we need to provide for these sites, and those include our phone numbers, and those include emails, and this doesn't solve the problem of revenge porn. Unfortunately, it is easy enough for somebody to, for example, get a SIM card and use a fake number that way. So really, we're fighting and trying to get into these spaces as much as possible to raise our issues around needing to get some kind of control around our work through decriminalization and through transparency and through solidarity across worker communities. We very much need to be understood as people who, arguably more so than any other kind of worker, truly need labor laws. And so those are just a few of the issues we deal with. You know, of course, we can see with something like Sesta Fossa, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but when they shut down Backpage in the name of trying to stop trafficking, what ended up happening was not only had Backpage been a place for police to be able to track and find people who might be being exploited, therefore pushing them into essentially underground and into the darkness more. But people who were advertising on Backpage ended up going back into the hands of people who were potentially exploiting them before, or going back out into the street and working that way. So we are continually arguing for more and safer options of ways of working, and also highlighting, you know, the stigma around our work is very unhelpful. You know, when we listen to Iodi speak, I'll be very interested to hear what he has to say, because from our perspective, it's ignored that we know that taxi drivers experience a high level of violence, but sex workers, because of the misogyny and the infantilization around who we are, we get seen as a work that is exclusively dangerous to us. And based on these presumptions and these sort of blinkered vision understanding of our work, they pass laws that actually make things worse for us. They drive us into the hands when we don't have legal and vetted options of people to work with. We're left with a bulked up black market of people who are poised and ready to exploit our lack of options. So I suppose those are a few things I'll say for now, and I look forward to hearing from everybody and taking questions. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Kate, for that fascinating journey through the challenges that sex workers face in the very much real economy, but also in the online platform economy, and how that interacts with workers and with the broader gig economy. There are certainly some great common threads that run across the gig economy between sex workers and transport workers. The one thing that comes to mind immediately, as I know that, you know, Uber drivers for years have asked for a sort of a panic button. It used to be in the analog world, if a driver had a dangerous passenger, they were able to call dispatch fairly quickly, and nearby drivers would just come along so that there was visibility and protection, and it was usually enough to calm things down. But the irony of joining a platform like Uber is that although you're never more connected, you're actually never more alone, because the platform prohibits, stops workers from connecting with each other and supporting each other. And also, I think in terms of the marginalization, because of transport work is sensitive in terms of carrying vulnerable passengers, safeguarding is a really important issue, but it's led to greater police enforcement and surveillance of the industry, and the marginalization of what's often a minority dominated workforce. So a lot of these issues of sort of policing, criminalization, marginalization of the workforce feel very, very familiar indeed across that gig economy. So next on our list is Iode. Iode Ibrahim is the president and founder of the National Union of App-Based Transport Workers in Nigeria. He's also the president of the International Alliance of App-Based Transport Workers, which is one of the largest international alliances of app-based transport workers in the world at the moment. Iode, can I hand over to you?
Yes, thank you very much, James, for the wonderful job and opportunity you give to us to force our problem to the world so that we can have a solution to it. Thank you very much for the good work you do always. My name is Comrade Ayode Ibrahim. As he rightly said, I'm the founder and president of National Union of Professional App-Based Transport Workers here in Nigeria, as well as vice president of International Alliance App-Based Transport Workers. Our problem is our problem. Let me start from algorithm control, that is algorithmical management of Uber and Bolt, because algorithm control is the one that do a lot of work to drivers, blocking the drivers, do a lot of things, even in the income. These are the things that control our movement on the road through the GPS. But may I say this, the algorithm control is not clear to us as a driver, the way and manner Uber and other app companies manage these systems. Because this system operates in one way sided. Or if a customer give a report to the platform, there is no way the driver will have opportunity to defend himself. It will be blocked immediately. And this one causes a lot of problem in terms of income, in terms of safety, in terms of everything around our operations. Let me give an example. If a particular driver borrow money from bank to put a car into a particular platform like Uber and other platform, and then maybe after 2 weeks, and he carry a customer, and the customer now make a report, automatically it will be blocked. And when it blocks, he cannot see money again to settle the loan that collect from the bank. These are the major problems that the driver face. And it's very problematic for us to really sort out how this algorithm works. And we're still talking about the data that all these app companies, collect from us. And what baffles us is that there's a lot of data. For example, in Nigeria, they collect many data in Nigeria that even the regulation is not capturing, because there is nobody that's monitor our data, what they do with our data, how they use our data, how our data has been managed. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. And this is worrisome for us as a drivers, because when we are talking about income of a driver, everything basically on how the driver works and how the driver gets incomes and how the drivers will be able to, manage himself on the road. But all these things is not transparent. We are just working in a blanket system that whatever they give to us is what we work on. So these are the major problems that we have with this issue of data concerned to our safety. Let me now give you an example. If a driver work for a particular week and is supposed to get like 20,000 naira, let me just use it as a Nigeria currency, and at the end of the day, the driver cannot get it maybe in a space of 2 hours and in the space of 8 hours, according to the labor law in Nigeria. Automatically, the driver will have to work more. And when you work more, there's going to be a fatigue. When there's a fatigue, there's going to be an accident. Because when somebody is tired already and they cannot stop because of income and because of the bill that you want to pay, this one jeopardizes the effort of the safety on in our platform. And we try to organize drivers, to educate drivers. In respect of we are doing all this, the major problem is that all these app companies never ever respect the law, the labor law. They never respect the labor law. They only do whatever they like. And I will cite a typical example. Recently, about a week ago, Bolt and Uber just come from nowhere and increase the commission. Uber is taking 25% before, they increase it to 28%, which we have evidence. They said a mail to us that they increase their commissions to 28%, and both increase their own to 25%. Without noticing, they can just wake up one day and do whatever they like and deal with challenges. Because there's no proper regulation, there's no proper monitoring. These are the opportunity that all these app companies are using against us, because nobody really understands how this system works and how this policy needs to be put in place to help the drivers. And when we're now talking about how we organize, how the incomes, how the safety is so bad in Nigeria to the extent that not only accidents, but car hijacking, armed robber, thieves, and what causes it is our company. You know why? Because they take money. They take money, you know, more important than the human life. And I will tell you why. For example, there's supposed to be a profiling of a rider in their system, but they refuse to do that, because what they are trying to do is that they just want anybody to pick a SIM and just make a request without too much questions, so that they can request. And this one is putting high risk into a driver. We lost a lot of drivers here in Nigeria last year, mostly last year. I'm not even talking about previous year. The last year one is too much, because we just discovered that people will just request and take you to a remote area and collect your money, or they even collect your car and they even kill you in the process. When we go back to all these app companies, please, SY said is on active right. And this is the problem. They will not give us any data of the customers, because they don't even really have the data of the customer. What they really need to do is about their commission. Immediately they collect their commission. In fact, imagine somebody carry a rider, and in the process, the car was snatching. In the process, the guy was killed by the rider. Do you know that they still collect their commission on the dead person? These are the ironing of what driver is passing through on that street, on that road every day. And we make a lot of noise to the authorities. And the other problem we have, especially in Nigeria, before I compare it, is most of even the organization did not understand how this industry works. For example, Uber will go to our government and tell them that, look, we provide employment for the youth of your country. Meanwhile, all this thing is just a mirage. Where's the employment they provide for us? When we buy our car, we fuel our car, we do everything around our cars. In fact, we still pay them salary through our commission, the way we work on the road. But even the government does not even understand how this technology works. That's the major problem. Even most of the people they want to do regulation today, do they have consultants? Did they consult people? Did they really know how the system works? Because these are the things that Uber, Bolt, and any other app company are used to manipulate the system and the government that's coming. So these are the major problems that we have in this system. When we now compare what is happening in the north and the south, you can see that, yes, the north is not really, happy with app companies. But compared to south, the south is in deep shit. Because, let me give an example. In UK there, they have a regulator called TfL, if I have not made a mistake. The TfL is the one to issue a license to a drivers. If you commit any crime on the platform Bolt or Uber, you cannot go to Bolt to go and work. But it doesn't work like that in Nigeria. In Africa generally, it doesn't work like that. Somebody can have a criminal record on Uber and they successfully operating on Bolt, because there is no central regulation that happened in UK like Nigeria. And when you are talking about income, the north is making money than the south. There's no doubt about it. Because no matter how the north is, they are still making, because the system in the north is working, at least it's working to a certain length. But the system in the south is dead concerning the technology. Many things is not right. So these are the difference. Although there's a lot of problem, for example, the issue of the judgment that Uber is not fully respect the Supreme Court judgment, they begin to gamble of many things. But the fact still remains that they respect certain part of that judgment. But it's not happening like that in the South. When we compare what is happening in the UK, like California, for example, during the time of Pro 22, Uber tricked the driver and the citizen, the customer, that look, if they vote for the Pro 22, there won't be an increasement, there won't be any problem, the driver will make more money. After they won that election, they increased the price. The driver, they give the opportunity to pick any ride, they revoke all those rights, all those opportunities. You can see how tricky the Uber and other app company they are. They make agreements, they will never honor that agreement. They will say one thing today, tomorrow they will say another thing. Despite that, the California have to wait for the federal law. Despite that, they are still enjoying, their law still more active than the South. Because there's a lot of things in the South that is not working concerned with technology. But what we enjoy in the South is this. We have opportunity to organize ourselves, to talk to, we have done a lot of protests, which successfully, a lot of protests, and we use media to fight back. Hardly you see in a week that we not make noise in the media. So we have opportunity. That one is working for us in the South very well. And we are using that opportunity very, very well. And we make that particular opportunity to make them uncomfortable. Because they have to be run up and down to our government, to this, to that. If to say our government really understand, when they run to them, tell them lies, they're supposed to come back to us. But it doesn't happen. But we still continue to push, because that is our power, to organize ourselves, to come together, to make things happen. That is our power. In that organizing, we have three categories of people. Because when you want to organize, you want to go for protest, you must do it in a way that everybody come out. But we discovered that you have three categories of people. And that's a time when we call for protest, people will come in mass, at times people will not come in mass. When we do our research, we observe that, look, there are some people, they have their own car on that platform. If you call them today to go for protest, they will honor it, because they don't deliver to anybody. They don't give anybody delivery, and they don't pay to bank. That is some category. We basically use those categories to do protest, to do strike. The second category is people that borrow money. We call them HP, higher purchase. People that borrow money from the bank, and they use that money to buy the car and put into their platform. Those one cannot stay too much when you call for the protest, because they want to meet up and they have to pay their loan back into the bank. That categories, we always look at the time that they make more money. Look, you have to spare your 5 hours today, 6 hours today, so let's join together. So we only basically use that their own parameter to call for strike. The third one is the people on rentage. You just go to somebody, maybe you go to the logistics firm, or you find somebody that can buy the car for you, and we call them work and eat. Because if they don't go out in a day, there is no way they will feed their family. So these categories, we always try and see how we can manage few of them to join us in the protest. But despite that, the major dangerous one the hard company is using is to use driver against driver. You know, they pay some driver money to do dirty job for them for protest. They will use that, and people may not really understand. But when you compare North, they do the same thing like that, but it's not effectively like South. Because the South, because of economy, because of what people are going through, it's very easy for them to manipulate some driver. But in North, it's not going to be easy like that. Although people are passing through a lot there, like America, like UK, like Canada, Australia, even India. So, but the fact still remains that they can, be able to navigate. For example, during the COVID-19, the American driver have opportunity, although I know it's not easy, to get this help from the government. I don't know the name they call it, to get the help from the government, maybe unemployment allowance or something. So that one, most of the driver in America got it by then. But in South, there is nothing like that. So these are the things that, but one permanent thing is that our problem are the same. The way the Uber treats driver in UK They even treat driver badly, more badly in Africa and Nigeria. So these are the things that we experience in our industry. And thank God for people like James Vera, that they can break the barriers. Let me just put it like that. They break the barriers, because that particular case that they won is the only thing that give roadmap to the world. Because see what is happening in Europeans now, European Union or European Parliament, they use cases to do it. And what is happening to us here in Nigeria that give us drive to take Uber to talk court is because of what James Farras and Yasin did to break the barriers. To say, yeah, this thing possible, guys, let's move on. And that's what it gives us for opportunity too in Nigeria, that we can drive them to our court of appeal here in Nigeria, and then we drive them to the industrial labor court here in Nigeria. So these are the things that I think the North did that the South emulates them to copy them and be able to do it. So in a roundup, I believe with the people like Jefaras in the system that put pressure and whatever, and people like us, and with the organization we are bringing on board now, International Alliance App-Based Transport Workers, I think the hope of driver globally is certain, and everything will be well placed the way we want it in terms of policy, in terms of regulation, in terms of income. Presently now, we start a campaign on deactivation and the blockage of drivers, because we pick it international level that these are the things that happen across the world, that deactivation is happening every part of the world, and the blockage is, and this is unfair. This is unfair. And secondly is the issue of data, because if you don't have that data, there is no way the union can negotiate for its member. So these are the things I think globally we are trying to work on it, and everything will work fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayode. Thanks very much for that wonderful presentation. I mean, some of the issues that come out of there that is really important to reminders is the financial risk that workers take in this industry by financing vehicles, taking out loans, then answering a call, answering a promise that when you go on a platform like Uber or Bolt, that's a free market. It's not a free market. It's algorithmically controlled. And so therefore, it's really, very, very, very important, if you're going to enter that world, that you understand you have transparency to the algorithmic rules that are filtering that market, because otherwise it's not fair to ask you to go and finance a vehicle and find that your hand has been tied behind your back all the time. In terms of safety, really stark reminders of some of the deaths and injuries that have happened to Nigerian drivers. Unfortunately, this is a reality in the West and the North as well. In London, 50% of private hire drivers have been physically assaulted. 85% have suffered some kind of hate abuse or Islamophobia. So it's pretty terrible for workers. And also in terms of the police interaction as well, there's a terrible story in Dublin a few weeks ago about a Deliveroo rider who was extorted by the police, took hundreds of euros from that female delivery worker on a bicycle, escorted her home to get money from her as a kind of a taxed worker. For something like that to be happening in Dublin is outrageous. And finally, in terms of the commission, Ayad is absolutely right. For Uber to justify taking 28% in Nigeria, but take 25 or 20% in the North, that's just complete exploitation of the global South. And where we need to be really vigilant now is on our data protection rights. Because as a result of some of the work we've been doing in challenging for data access and algorithmic transparency, Uber used to control all its data outside of North America in Amsterdam. And that gave all the workers out in those territories extraterritorial GDPR rights in Europe. And since we started exercising these, just in November last year, Uber changed all that to bring data controllership of all of those countries outside Europe back to North America. Now, the interesting thing we'll see, and I look forward to working on this with you, Ayode, is that is that Nigeria actually on paper has got very good data protection laws, very equivalent to GDPR. Now let's see if we can work together with your organization in Nigeria and the international app-based transport workers to hold Uber to account, to say you must obey the law in Nigeria. You must obey digital rights for workers universally across that platform, regardless of whether you're in Europe or Nigeria or elsewhere. And let's see if we can hold them to account for that, because there's no reason why they shouldn't follow those same rights. Okay, we'll move on. So next up is Aida, but seems to have disappeared from the screen. Aida, are you there? Have we lost you? Ah, there she is. Hi, Ida. We lost you there for a minute. Ida is going to leave us at 1:30 sharp. So please do throw in some questions that you might have into the chat, I guess, Guillermo. But Ida, over to you for your presentation. You're on mute, I'm afraid.
Ida, unfortunately, we cannot hear you. Can you try? No, did you give permission to the mic, or try to refresh the page and turn on again and try with earphones?
I have refreshed. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
So I was saying thank you very much for this kind invitation, James. I'm happy to share thoughts with Kate. And I would like to, also for a point of comparison, bring in the Global South from the Latin America perspective. So I would like to speak about three things: some issues in Latin America, some risks, and what are the limitations of a platform directive like we are doing now in the EU are. So the issues that Latin America is facing is that the platform business model needs to be demystified, because some workers think that there is no way out of this precariousness of the working conditions, and that this precariousness is an essential part of the business model. We can see in Nigeria that it is very present, of course, but what we are trying to convey through the work of ETUI and other researchers is that working conditions can be decent and fair and transparent within the platform business model and with any other business model, actually. But in Latin America, we also have seen the intensification of the business model. The number of digital platforms grew between 2020 and 2021 because of the pandemics. Many services went or hired a platform to deliver to the customer. And also the modalities were seen as an opportunity when unemployment was present, of course. In Latin America, there are not only European or I don't know why I disappear from the screen, but I'm not touching any button. But in Latin America, I was explaining there are also digital platforms coming from China, which also changes the rules of the game, which are the digital platforms in which we are used to deal with in Europe are a little bit different to those that are present or driven by Chinese companies. Also, there are plans for legislation, but the legislation goes in two ways. There is a plan for legislation in Mexico, for example, that aims at regulating the pricing for the customer because it's an unfair competition. So this is about the pricing, which is nothing related to labor law or working conditions. But there are other discussions about having legislation to improve the labor conditions of platform workers, which could be a similar instrument like the one we're crafting in the EU. Workers are being organized. So there are trade unions organizing them. And for example, there is a movement as no more deliveries without rights. Very clear. Workers have the idea and are aware that their rights should be recognized and respected. So this is what is happening. But also they are quite aware that there is not only a bilateral negotiation, need for negotiation, but a trilateral in which the government needs to be involved. And this is what they're asking for, actually. This is a particular case in Latin America. The bill to regulate the pricing of the delivery is being discussed in the Senate, and the ideas for crafting a regulation that is similar to the directive on improving working conditions on platform work is just being discussed and being put in the table of negotiations. What are the particular risks? A distinction between, for example, the conditions in Mexico and the conditions in Latin America is, I can divide them in three dimensions of risks. First dimension is related to the infrastructure. Well, roads in Latin America are not made for bicycles or for motorcycles. They are made for cars and big vehicles. So that's a very big distinction. The infrastructure for cycling paths are not there. Hence, the number of accidents is bigger. The second dimension of the risk is related to the political and social environment. Criminality is the biggest risk to which riders are confronted to. And hence, there is a more, perhaps, number of men than women, but women are also present in this as a platform workers. Also, the use of motorbikes and motorcycles is higher than the use of bicycles because they can just do quicker in these difficult areas. Of course, it's also related to the lack of infrastructure, why the bicycles are not really present in big cities, being designed to be driven, to be populated by cars. Now, the third dimension of risks is related to working conditions and occupational health and safety. Well, as we have seen, because the infrastructure does not allow to have bicycles on the road, then the accidents are higher. And since the workers are available 20 hours of the day, there is no really work-life balance whatsoever, which is quite hard. In Latin America, many services are open all the time, literally. Work intensity is considerably high. For example, there is a study carried out by Mexican researchers that says that there are more or less an average of 10 deliveries every day per rider, which is quite high, I believe. And we know that also common psychosocial issues are present. We have an ETUI study made by my colleague Pierre Berastegui, outlining and mapping the common risks that we have, like anxiety, stress, repressed depression, but also boredom and alienation, and the diminish of the self-esteem in riders is really present in the gig economy, so to speak. So this is a kind of a very, very big overview of what are the difference between the North or the South from a Latin American perspective. Thank you.
Seems disappear, but could be on any minute.
Well, while James come back, maybe I can. Yeah, well, he's back.
Hello. My big fingers here. I touched the disconnect button rather than the unmute button. My apologies. I wonder, just in the couple of minutes that you've got remaining, Ida and Guillermo, I wonder if are we open to taking questions? Would be a good time to start seeing those questions. But Ida, I wonder if you had a minute to. Can't hear me? Oh, you can hear me? Okay. I wonder if you had a minute to just tell us a little bit more about the algorithmic control protections we may see in the draft European directive. You had a minute to tell us a little bit about that, if you could.
Yes, there is this draft directive on improving working conditions in platform work. And this is really a great initiative because it covers not only the riders or the delivery workers, it covers every single worker in the platform business model. So it's designed to cover everybody. So that's really a great news from the European Commission. And it also recognizes some new rights in face of algorithmic management, which is really, really cool, to be honest, because the AI Act define algorithmic management, but not really in a comprehensive way. Here we have a good definition. It can be improved though, because algorithmic management is technically complex because of the many layers of processes involved. But the directive could be improved when it's going to be negotiated, and it's going to be negotiated really fast. One, because the French presidency has this file in its priority, so they will put a lot of effort so that this directive will be adopted quite soon, and because the Commission really wants this to be regulated. So we have the first draft a month ago, and now the Parliament is going to take over for the future negotiations. So there are some specific rights on algorithmic management, like the right to have access to the information and being consulted. So the workers individually or collectively can access to the algorithm and to the processes that will make or assist in the decisions regarding them. Quite similar to GDPR, so very happy that the Commission has recognized that the GDPR principles apply in this area of the economy, but yet perhaps, for example, there should be the right to portability, one of the key issues that workers have already signaled, and this draft doesn't contain it. So there might be a nice, interesting negotiation aspects in regards to introducing the right to portability, not only about the data and the good reviews, but the whole profile, including the skills of workers that are acquiring in their jobs. So this right of portability could include to transfer workers' data, profile, and skills to other digital platforms, of course. But it's also interesting if workers would be able and have the capacity to transfer outside the digital platform economy to any other employer. So yeah, it could be something to pitch into the directive. Then the right to review, it's there, it's okay. It's quite broad. It's not really how to contest an algorithm through GDPR has been very difficult. This directive introduces or recognizes this right to review, but this doesn't really tell us how. It's quite similar like Article 22 GDPR. So I think that there must be, for example, the right for workers to really understand the whole of the evidence and information that the platform is supposed to give back, but also to have, for example, the labor inspectorate to review the algorithms, or to have a third-party conformity assessment before those algorithms be put into place and be deployed by the digital platform. And of course, another common request from the trade union movement has been the right or the possibility to have an independent arbitration with regards when a decision is being made of. Now, here, the directive doesn't really distinguishes between automated decisions or semi-automated decisions, which is the case of Uber and other platforms. And I think that the directive should make this distinction, because not all decisions are automated. And even when a human is in between the decision-making process, the right to review that decision should be exercisable by workers. This is very important. And if the directive doesn't elucidate this, then the right is completely lost.
Yes.
And of course, the right to communicate among themselves, it's another new right in the proposal. It's great. I think it's possible. It should be possible for the workers to communicate among themselves, but in the same platform. So something that the digital platform should make available. Otherwise, there might be the risk of miscommunication or to discriminate workers that cannot do it other way. So there must be a way for digital platforms to implement mechanisms of communication. And this will allow, of course, workers to be organized more easily, to be represented easily, and to exchange in a better way, and perhaps to do collective bargaining more easily. So these are really, really very few things that I can share with respect to algorithm management. But of course, the directive goes more further. Thank you, James.
Thank you so much, Aida, and we'll let you go. Thank you. That was really magnificent. Just some comments on this algorithmic management question. The approach we've been taking at Worker Info Exchange is to help workers to exercise their access rights so that we can pool the data and build a workers' data trust. But the other half of this is understanding and making transparent algorithmic management and control, and particularly automated decision making that relates to key areas like work allocation, fairness in work allocation, but also in terms of performance management and dismissals. And so this question of the Article 22 protections you have against automated decisions become critical, because there is a kind of a get-out clause that if there's a human in the loop, then there's the protections drop away. But the question is that it's rarely binary. It's often that these are semi-automated decisions, and you've got bots involved, and you've got natural language programming techniques. And to give you a practical example of that, which you can find in our report that we've just issued, was a driver who couldn't get through. He wasn't getting work allocated. He knew something must be wrong with his profile. And the only way he could get past these automated responses that were coming in messages was to threaten suicide. He said, "I'm going to go home and end it all if you don't answer me." And of course, he was kidding, but what he was trying to do is break through these semi-automated responses, which he did. But they suspended him for a few weeks to check on his mental health. But it gives you an idea of this sort of absurd world we enter into. Thank you so much, Aida. That was fantastic. Kate, can I turn to you for a second, just to follow up on a few things? But particularly, I wanted to ask you about content creation and the OnlyFans situation. I wonder if you had a minute to tell us a little bit about content creation, worker rights in terms of content creation. It was a very interesting case a few years ago with IG Metall and YouTubers. But this seems to me OnlyFans is the sex workers context for the struggle for control of content.
Sure. I mean, the OnlyFans debacle really uncovers just how important destigmatization and decriminalization are, because even before OnlyFans threatened to ban porn entirely, payment platforms were getting pressure from prohibitionist organizations to stop serving anybody related to sex workers. So it's very hard to get a bank account. It's very hard to receive payments from clients if they think that if you're a sex worker. Now, again, this is sort of hanging on the hook of preventing trafficking, though we need say that that strategy around that needs to be more about safe immigration, rights upon entry, abolishing direct provision centers, which are sort of institutionalized holding centers that we have in Ireland with very substandard conditions where people are not allowed to work or make their own food, and people end up engaging in sex work in those, regularizing undocumented migrants, creating firewalls for undocumented migrants to report to authorities, these kinds of things. However, these payment platforms have started making it very difficult for us now in this shift of time and proliferation of online work to be able to adapt to avail of our new way of working, which has been content creation. So OnlyFans, of course, which started as I think a sort of knitting and baking platform, but sex workers, as we do, being very ingenious in these kinds of ways, discovered this would be a very good way for us to make money. They got the pressure from the banks to stop taking us as users. And so they threatened to ban porn altogether. There was an outcry. Frankly, it probably was helped by the fact that it's become quite mainstream. There would be sort of famous celebrities now who have OnlyFans pages, and they did end up backpedaling. However, they said that it was a suspension. So, I mean, realistically, we can only think that it's been kicked down the road. But, for example, our need to unionize and to have decriminalization, Gardaí here, they scrape our numbers from the only advertising site that is legal because it's held offshore. And they have been making fake bookings with people and in the name of doing welfare checks. And there have been a few people that have said, that's nice to know, thank you. But for most people, they find it very unsettling, not only because they want to know why Gardaí are looking at their numbers there, they are afraid that they will get evicted from their apartments, which happens very often. They're afraid if they're undocumented, and in the very least, they're afraid that Gardaí would camp outside of our places to arrest our clients, which are our bread and butter. So it's very complicated. Again, if we could have baseline decriminalization and legal ways of working, at least we could be more part of the game of strategizing around how to be safe. But right now, it's just us hiding and being afraid to engage with authorities at all. So that's the debacle that happened with OnlyFans, and of course, so many people joining and prices plummeting and things like that. We want to be able to diversify,
Yeah, that's a familiar story again. Thank you so much for that. We have a couple of comments here. We've got 1 minute left. Where we come from Victor. The portability means some sort of normalization between platforms. And that's not always feasible. Well, that's true in part, Victor, but we're finding, though, that there is a high degree of consistency with this type of data around geolocation data, GPS data, fair income data, and so on. So the core of that data is quite useful and fairly common in our experience in running access requests. What may be different is the algorithmic control and the profiling, but that's not covered within the scope of portability anyway. But point taken. And Jill also raised the panel at the point about this problem of in-app communication that's promised within the EU directive. Could that concentrate more data within the garden walls of the platform and allow for potentially union busting strategies? Potentially it could, Jill. It also could have the other effect, because a lot of unions, when they're trying to get recognition agreements, try to negotiate for neutrality and access agreements, access to the platform or to a building to recruit workers. So I think IDG, for example, the US, has some kind of access agreement to the platform with Uber, so that Uber at least distributes content through the app for them. So it cuts both ways, but I think it's down to the quality of the agreement that can be reached. But good points. I think we're all out of time. Thank you so much to Aida, to Kate, and to Iode. I think it's been a fantastic discussion. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you so much to Guillermo and to the team at EDRI for the opportunity to speak here. Thanks a lot. Have a good conference.